Hi, and welcome to Yam TV. Today I'm with my former youth leader, Sister Angelina. Today we're going to discuss being a godly mother and raising godly children. So Sister Angelina, tell us a bit about your story and how many children you have and your background.
Okay, I have 5 children aged from the range of 23 to age 9. I have 4 daughters and 1 son. I've worked with children since 1998. I qualified as a nursery nurse, and then I went on to do qualifications in youth work, and then I got a degree to combine the two. So I was interested in knowing how the children's minds work and actually how to nurture them. So I thank God for that insight and that background knowledge. My experience of raising children is very near and dear to me, because I think you have to be led by God and be in tune with Him. You also have to make time for each individual child and actually understand how they learn and understand their sensitivities. There's always one thing that you can be with one child that you can't be with another. But one of the key factors that I learned is that children's body language, and they're very observant. And if they learn what they live, and if they observe and take on the characters of both parents, it's important that we cover them from certain issues and needs, because they are immature. They haven't come into adult maturity. They are immature. They're very favourable for their parents and very sensitive. If you think of a child in the playground, one of the key things that you would wind a child up is to talk about their parents, is to talk about their siblings. That will cause an eruption. Most children would want to fight you. Yeah. Even the quietest child will probably, get out of themselves and be quite annoyed or quite angry, because that person is near and dear to them. So one of the tips I would share is that, for me, I've understood that children are their parents' biggest fans. So when things happen in the house, it's always good as parents to speak about things behind closed doors. It's okay to be open and honest with your children and say to them, you know what, Mum and Dad are going through a certain time, but we love each other and we are seeking God in this matter, and we are working things out together as God leads. One of the things I always say not to do is to speak, whether sometimes it's being conscious. So if you're speaking about what someone done to you in church, or what someone done to you, and you speak it around your children, number one, you're setting them up for downfall, because if they're not filled, they're not able to deal with it. And also, when you've gotten over it, that child still has that person up in their heart, because they hurt their mum's feelings. Yes. They made their mum cry. They made their mum emotional. Their mum went through a very hard time. And it's hard for God to penetrate that young person's spirit. It's hard for bitterness comes up, all sorts of animosities and feelings that they're not able to manage. Yeah. So it's very hard for them to come out themselves and worship. And also that we know that the enemy doesn't sleep. So other things will come into it. So we have to be very mindful that adult business and church business is for the believer to understand how to deal with. The Bible says go to that person in love. The Bible tells us, instructs us. It doesn't say speak about it on the phone around your children. It doesn't even say to speak around your husband or your older children, that where others can hear. Because we also have to cover the unbeliever. For me, my husband was unsaved at the time, and it was important that I also covered him from church issues, because why would somebody want to go in and be a part of something they, number one, never had the full understanding of, but also, why would they want to be a part of something that's got so much chaos and such unity and has so many issues of the world practiced by doing things to one another, hurting each other, doing things that we know are not godly. So it's important that I covered him from something that he was not yet a part of, and I allowed the Lord to lead me in leading him. that when he became a part of the kingdom, I still had to be mindful that there's certain things you can express and there's certain things not to express, because there's a danger in that. So again, I would say befriend your children, talk about the love of God, talk about the things that the Lord is, and also openly talk about miracles. Do you know that we never had this and the Lord provided about them? Show them and expose God's presence to them. Make the Lord as real to them as possible, because that will set them up to have an understanding that this is what my parents does to draw close to the Lord. I've seen the Lord do miracles in my home. I've seen the Lord heal. I've seen the Lord fill my siblings. And you want them to come in knowing that serving the Lord is not only an enjoyable experience, but it's the only way.
So I want to ask you something that I think might help some people. So you said your husband wasn't saved at the time, so you got saved before your husband, right? And how did you live your life, and what conflicts did you overcome? You don't have to be specific, but obviously there would have been maybe some tensions because you get saved and he's not saved yet. What do you think? What did God show you how to live your life that helped you lead him eventually to come to Christ? And what advice would you give to someone who's in the same position, who maybe has a husband or a partner who's not saved and they want them to be saved?
Get desperate. And I literally mean get desperate. You have to rely on the Lord for every and anything. Death and life is in the power of the tongue. So you have to be careful what you're speaking into existence. I used to always say, my husband will be saved. I never did say my husband's not saved yet. I say not saved yet. So I was speaking life that he will be saved. Also, I had to be careful of my very conduct, because I recognize that that was also a very big issue for me, because I think the complication came was when I got saved, my husband wasn't saved. So I changed. So my very chase of music, my very conduct, my very interest changed. So I had to now go back to the Lord. And it was almost like I was in a classroom. Everything I wasn't sure of, I went back to the Lord. So I looked for interest that was common. Mm-hmm. So things that we could do together. And I also respected where he was. So it wasn't a thing where I was saying, you have to come to church, you have to come to church. I made sure I fasted, I prayed. When things got too much, I called mothers and people that were confident to help me pray and help me to support, because it was a very precious time. And I also understood that my role was head at that time, but my role is not to be the head. So the Lord allowed me to lead, and he still is leading me, but I don't get confused, because the pressures that I face as a head is not given to me because I'm not the man.
Right.
So I recognize it's God first, the man and the woman. It's not to say that we're inferior, it's not to say that he's in control, but I understand his roles of when my husband speaks to my son, the very authority that my husband's voice, without shouting commands,
right,
shows that he is to be the head.
Right.
Whereas a lot of the time when I'm leading in the home, I recognize that I'm calling the family to devotion. I'm leading them into family devotion. I'm leading them, I'm sitting down and I'm teaching the children, about the wonders of God, about, biblical characters and different things. I recognize the role. And I think when you sit at God's feet, if you're open to be led and fully dependent, I've had to learn that. I've had to learn how to pour out my frustrations in worship. I've had to learn to get beside myself in worship in order to draw. So I thank God that he's not a God, and I was saying that yesterday to another church sister. I said, thank God that he's not a God that gets tired of listening to us. So I will pour out my complaint to God. I will pour out my feelings, and I will petition to God, and I will ask God for direction. And I recognize that when I'm asking for God for direction, I'm asking him to lead me. Because sometimes we get frustrated and we pick back up the problem and try and solve it. But that's not, if you're giving it to God, give it to God and leave it with him. If you want to solve it yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you're giving it to him, don't try and work it out. And that's one of the things that the Lord taught me. Leave it with him. It might not be my time for me. There might be some endurance and things I have to go through to overcome. So I thank God for that, because maybe in the time that my husband got saved, there's lots of obstacles that I wouldn't have been able to overcome. The Lord has taught me to come out of being so shy and timid. He's taught me how to overcome feeling the isolated or feeling alone, because raising your family with children and you're not in other houses, it can be a lonely feeling. But it's taught me to have the Lord as a best friend. If I didn't have those circumstances, I wouldn't have the Lord the center of my life. I talk to the Lord as if the Lord is his physical being, as around me, because that's what I've had to learn to do as a survival mode. So my children will tell you, I talk to the Lord as if anywhere I go, wherever I am, I speak to him, and I'm very real. If things are not going my way, I will say, Lord, I need your help here. This has not been a good day for me. I am not overcoming. I'm not being an example to my children. I'm not feeling great about myself. And I tell him exactly how I feel. I don't dress it up and go and say, oh Lord, woe is me. Because it's not about having a pity party. It's about being dependent on a God that knows all and is my creator.
So, do you think that because of this situation and the way you got saved and the way your husband got saved, do you think that not only strengthened your relationship with God, which you're saying, it strengthened your relationship with your husband as well?
Yeah, and it's changed our relationship, because there were many issues that the Lord brought into our relationship that made things change. We had to come together in prayer. If things were as it stood and working out the way it did, maybe it would have me going to God alone. So it's changed the relationship, because now his interest has now changed, and now he's found his identity in the Lord. So you understand that our God is a God of purpose, and he's a God of order, and he doesn't give us what we can't bear. But at the same time, you have to understand that when you're walking in purpose, it's all about obedience. So when you're in control of your own destiny, when you're a manly man, now you realize that you can't do all what you want to do. You now have to be answerable. So you now have to make sure that you're in line. So we enjoy prayer times. We enjoy going to service together. Our devotional times are excellent, because if my husband just comes in, he'll join us. So I thank God for seasons, because we never understand his will, and it's only sometimes when things fall in line you actually understand why that happened the way it is. You couldn't see it at the beginning, but when it comes into play, then you think, I understand now. But my encouragement to anyone that has an unsaved husband or wife, the deeper you go into the word and the closer you draw to the Lord, is the best example that you can be. So even if things don't look well, the closer you draw to the Lord, number one, is going to sustain you. And the deeper you go into the word, his word is going to keep you. And then you begin to speak life. Speak it as it is. And one of the key things I enjoy doing, and I'm telling a personal secret, is when there was nobody in my house, I used to start from the top of my house right to the bottom. And I used to pray. I used to sit where they sit. I used to place my hands on their pillow. I used to plead the blood. I used to speak life. I used to counsel. I used to go to war with nobody in my house. And then I used to open the windows and tell all things to go. And I used to speak what I wanted. God's Lord, put more joy, put more love, give us more temperance. And you exercise yourself in a different way. And one of the key things I say, once you have that close connection, because if you drift, you're not being an example. And one of the key encouragements I would give if I had stopped praying for my husband the time that I did, and if I had given up hope, I may not have seen what I see now. So no matter how hard it looks, keep going.
Well, Sister Angelina, we thank you for those great words of wisdom, and I'm sure we're going to have you back in the future. So this is just the first time. So we'd like to thank you, and God bless you, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
God bless you. Thank you very much.
Signs that say, keep moving, you're not too far.